All right, my friend. I'm here with Chris Fletcher. All
Yes,
right.
indeed, sir.
And
That's a
my
shout out to our buddy Billy Rayner,
Billy Rainier,
who,
who
uh,
that was his call. That was his call at Duquesne at the
at,
basketball
yeah,
game.
the basketball game when we needed a rally, which often most Duquesne games do need a rally. He
Absolutely.
would be known to bellow out the name of Cy Hugo, the great Cy Hugo
The
Green.
great Cy Hugo Green, who, by the way, should be in the College Basketball Hall of Fame because how many guys who were two-time first team All-Americans are not in the College Basketball Hall of Fame?
I don't understand that travesty at all. But sometimes it takes these halls of fame to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. I've gone with a nickname that, you know, our great coach, Duty Moore, had. And I wonder why more people just haven't adopted the name Duty.
I don't know. I don't know. It would seem to be your duty to adopt that nickname.
That's good. That's good,
Thank you.
my friend. Well, tonight we celebrate the 73rd anniversary. I'm doing my math in my head, Fletch. Yes, 73 years ago tonight. Uh, Probably the most important forgotten event in the history of the integration of sports occurred.
Yeah.
It's the night Chuck Cooper played an exhibition game against Baltimore. Now, you look down, and I don't blame the NBA much for kind of forgetting this, and I don't blame the Celtics because, quite frankly, until I was doing the research for the book Chuck and I wrote on his father, Breaking Barriers, nobody probably really looked into the fact that that's the night that Chuck became the first African-American player to step on an NBA court. But regardless, it is a momentous occasion. I mean, I was going online the other night just to kind of see what else happened on October 18th. And it's not the team, it's not a Celtic website, but one of their, the Steelers have 10 million sites that follow them, celebrating Red Auerbach's first game as a coach,
right?
Which was that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, we took the time to celebrate that, which we should. I mean, Red Auerbach, arguably the greatest coach, not just in NBA history, but in professional sports history.
Would that also be Bob Cousy's first game with the Celtics? Because didn't they pick him up from what was it, the Chicago team that folded?
Chicago Zephyrs, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Good call. But we have with us tonight a very special guest. It's Chuck's son, Chuck Cooper, who basically Chuck Cooper III, who basically when his father wasn't really getting a lot of recognition that he so deserved way back when, kind of helped through the foundation that he named after his father, brought his father back did an amazing job to bring his father into the national spotlight again. And it culminated with him being elected to the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, or the Basketball Hall of Fame. It certainly college stars can get in there too. So it's a neat thing that they do for basketball. It encompasses certainly basketball around the world. But Chuck did just such an amazing job, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. But we're going to bring him up with us here. And my friends out in 412 land, Chuck Cooper III, who I had the definite honor of helping write his father's story with, which was certainly probably the book that I cherish the most that I've done. Chuck, how are you tonight?
Oh, you're muted, Chuck.
I think you're muted, Chuck. If you want to, hang on. I think you muted yourself, bud.
Oh, I'm sorry. You get me now?
Go ahead. Yeah, now I can hear you.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. I was just saying, hey, it's a great day. I get a chance to be on the show with my favorite co-host and certainly my favorite co-author. So it's great to be on with you gentlemen today. How you doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
Doing great.
I'm
Good to see
speaking
you,
for
man.
you, Cy Hugo, but are you doing good?
So
I don't
Hugo,
wanna-
I heard you guys talking about Cy Hugo. That was Uncle Cy to me.
Uncle Cy, yeah.
Uncle
Talk a
Cy,
little
I
about
mean,
that.
what a
Talk a
great
little-
player. My dad had a lot of respect for Cy Green, and he would come back, on campus and have conversations with those guys and with Jim Tucker, Cy Green, and some of those greats to follow my dad at Duquesne, the Ricketts brothers. One of the reasons why is because Duquesne was a university that, at that time was very progressive.
Yep.
And they were allowing African Americans not only to play, but as you guys know, my father was the team captain his senior year. So, but what a great group of players that Duquesne had. I mean, just high character guys on and off the court. Fletcher Johnson became a doctor. So, my father had a lot of respect for the university, and it's just amazing to me that there's still a very high, solid bond between the Cooper family and the great university, Duquesne.
Absolutely. You got two buildings named after him, and one being our fantastic new facility, basketball facility.
And I hope we continue to play well. I think we got a pretty good record at the Coop. And this season, I tell you what, I got a chance to go to practice the other day, and this team, there's something special about this team.
Tell Fletcher we're going to break.
Come on, guys! Don't do this to me. Don't do this. You're
long.
getting excited, and I'm going to cry again. No. Come on.
I tell you, Chris, the level of camaraderie and just how each man is a part of the team and how they respond to each other, as a team and not as individuals. I've spent a long time since I've been around a team that is that together. Now, I hope and pray that translates to some great play on the court, but this team is probably deeper than any team that they've had in recent years. So I'm super optimistic and super excited about this year's Dukes.
Well, BB was on last week talking the same thing, so maybe I will be convinced, but I've had my heart broken too many times.
Now, I think this is going to be a great year. Coach Danbrock, he keeps pushing. They've had some coaching changes down at the university, and some of the guys I hate to see go, but I think they got some new coaches in, and certainly some new players that I can't wait. I think it's November 6th that they tip off. Yeah. I read recently. I know it's early in November, and I can't wait to see that first game.
They've been rated no lower than third in the A10. Couple of number 2 ratings, and Joe Lunardi at one point had them as the top Atlantic 10 team, which
it translates
to an automatic bid, Fletch.
Well, I'll tell you what, it translates on a practice court. I just hope it shows up on game day. I think this is a team that's really together. They're deep, they're talented, they get shooters. They got big guys this year. They're a well-rounded, deep team. So let's go Dukes.
Let's go Dukes indeed. I'm going to set up the situation here for you, Chuck, and then I'm going to ask you to comment on it. Now, when we started doing research on our book, the name escapes me. The lawyer on the foundation, his name, the one that went to the lunch with us.
It was either Matt Mead. Was it Matt Mead or Anthony Sparberly?
I think it was Matt Mead.
Matt Mead.
That name's hitting the bell. He came up to me and he asked, did you ever look up to see in the exhibition season to see if Chuck was the first African-American actually to hit basketball court?
Steve Zakelli.
That's it.
Steve, I want to make sure we shout because Steve was so passionate about my father's legacy. Steve Zakelli.
He was. So, I put in the wanted to put in the effort on that one because that was an important question. Nobody really ever asked that. And so here's what I found out. We have Earl Lloyd. We had of course Sweetwater Clifton, and then Hunter was the first to actually sign a contract. Correct.
Never played a game, unfortunately, but the first to sign.
Okay, so those are the 4 African Americans who had NBA distinction at that point in time who could have gone for this. Well, Hunter had been cut from the team before they started playing any exhibition games, so that puts him out. Sweetwater Clifton was actually playing minor league baseball in the Cleveland Indians system at that point in time. He was hitting 304, which was fantastic.
Wow.
What an athlete he was.
Amazing.
But he was in Chicago for 3 weeks getting his teeth fixed. So he never stepped on a court until late in the exhibition season. And Lloyd didn't play till 3 days after against Syracuse on the 21st. So your father stepped onto a court on October 18th, 1950, as the first African-American ever to step on an NBA court.
Wow.
Which, I mean, you know, people are celebrating that as Red Auerbach's first game, which is amazing that happened on the same day. And as Fletcher mentioned, Bob Cousy's first game. But to me, the significance in American sports history is what your father did. Okay. I mean, we've had lots of coaches have their first games. Every coach has their first game. You know, Bob Cousy, every superstar has their first game, but only once will an African-American step foot on a court for the first time. And that was your father. And that was that night. And they beat Baltimore 102-92. And not only did he step on the court, but he was a beast that game. He had 18 points as the leading scorer.
On him. Yep, yes, he did.
He was amazing. And even though he was amazing, you know, the press that night was talking about Bob Cousy's passes more than your father's 18 points. But when I got into the game a little more and got into the play-by-play, he was such a beast underneath. And I know I used that term twice, but I don't know how to describe how dominant he was that night. But he was defensively, they couldn't score on him. And he scores. I mean, he ends up being one of the best defensive players in the league that year and becomes on the first all rookie team, which was selected that year. He becomes the first African-American on an all rookie team in the NBA. So Chuck, if you would talk a little bit about your thoughts about that night and the fact that, you know, he has such a great place in history that should be celebrated that really wasn't known about until we looked it up.
Well, first of all, a beast on the boards is good enough that you can continue to use it throughout the interview. I like I like that, David. But yeah, you know, it was amazing for him to have that first game and be the highest scorer with you know, with some great scores on the court like his good friend Bob Cousy, and to go on and have a great year. You know, being not only established himself as one of the best defenders, but one of the top rebounders. He was at barely 6'5". I think he measured just a shade under 6'5", you know, with his shoes off. Was the 11th leading rebounder in the NBA his rookie year. So and that was the Celtics' first winning season, and that franchise never looked back. 17 world championships later. So the start off and at that level to establish yourself immediately that, hey, I'm somebody, if you decide to go to me, you know, I can be that scorer for you, you know, really meant a lot, not only to himself, but, you know, as the kickoff for African-Americans to begin playing in the NBA.
You know, and Boston's never been a city that's been known for, you know, its support of racial relations. Let's just put it that way. How was that for your dad going to Boston and being that sort of trailblazer?
Well, quite honestly, you know, back in those days, there wasn't a city really that was friendly to African Americans.
Well, that's good.
We still struggle today. I don't know if Boston was that much different. You know, it had of course, they had the busing situation than it was to most American cities. Today, I mean, you know, occasionally you still hear things, but you know, it was tough for a black man, an African American, anywhere. You know, certainly when he was at Duquesne, traveling south of the Mason-Dixon line, probably had to be pretty scary. And David knows this, to the tune that whenever his freshman year at Duquesne, when they would go across the line, they wouldn't start him. You know, he would come off the bench, even though his freshman year, he was one of the better players on that team. So, but, you know, I will say this, the Boston Celtics now, you know, they drafted my father as the first African-American to ever be drafted by any NBA team. They started the first black starting five, right, and they hired the first black head coach, who also became the first black coach to win a championship by the way. So we can talk about Boston and racism in America, but we can't doubt the Celtics organization. And even today, I sit on the Celtics United for Social Justice board, and they're committed to doing what they can to end systemic racism, which is a huge bite to undertake. But it's just an organization. Another thing I tell people all the time, David and Chris, is, if we could have picked any major league franchise, and they say any sport to be historically connected to, I don't think there's a better pick than a 17-time world champion Boston Celtics.
Absolutely. Chuck, your dad was good friends with Bob Cousy. There was a night, I believe it was in North Carolina. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't you tell us a little about that story?
So they played in, I think it was in Raleigh, the game was, David, I'm not mistaken. They played in Raleigh, and my father, Earl Lloyd and Sweetwater Clifton and some of the other pioneers that followed them at that time, there's on occasion they couldn't stay at the hotel with the team. They couldn't go have dinner with the team in some of the restaurants. They couldn't jump in a cab with their teammates, to move around and try to enjoy themselves after the game. On this occasion, my father couldn't stay at the hotel, so he told Red. He said, Coach Red Auerbach, who another barrier breaker and Hall of Famer and just tremendous person who I had the honor of meeting, before he passed. I told him that, hey, Red, I'll catch the sleeper back to Boston and be ready for the next game. And Bob, his good friend Bob Cousy, said, Chuck, I'm not going to let you go by yourself. So they caught the train together. And now Bob Cousy tells a story. My dad never told me this part of the story, but Bob said they went to the train station. Two young guys after a game, they're a little thirsty, so they're having a couple more cold ones. And now, with beer has a tendency to run through you pretty quick. So they had to go to the bathroom. So they, say, hey, come on, let's go. So they get to the bathrooms, and it's white only. And Bob Cousy says, he was just embarrassed actually to be a man when he saw that sign. Here he was to support his teammate, and once again, Jim Crow and an ugly face of racism smacking him dead in the face. So Bob says that he said, come on, Chuck, let's go. So they went to the platform. And the way Bob tells the story, he said it was a Rosa Parks moment for him. He said, because they peed together off of the platform. Now, my dad never told me that part of the story about peeing off the platform, but being a young man at one time and drinking some beer, it's not too far-fetched to believe it happened, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I wish you hadn't said that as I'm sitting here drinking beer now. I'm thinking about that. So if you see me get up for a minute, you're going to know what's happening.
I didn't know that. I'd have had a cold one on standby over here.
So Chuck, why, baseball has always done a great job of celebrating its history, and particularly around Jackie Robinson. Why do you think basketball and the NBA was so slow to make this recognition?
That's a great question. I think the first part of that answer is Jackie was the first.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the first. And when you look at the integration of the NBA, two things that happened. One was Jackie Robinson breaking the barrier. And baseball was the sport at that time. It was considered the American pastime. And the other thing is the Harlem Globetrotters beat the Minneapolis Lakers, which were they were the most dominant team in the NBA. They would won a couple championships, and the Globetrotters beat them on back-to-back occasions. Now, a good NBA game would draw between 5,000 to 7,000 fans. That game against the Globetrotters in back-to-back years in Chicago drew over 17,000 fans. So if it makes dollars, it makes sense, right?
Right.
Plus they won, so they proved that that they can only play at that level, but they beat the best white team in the NBA. The other part of it is, I tell people, and it makes sense when you hear it, is baseball has enough individual components to it. Like you had to pitch to Jackie Robinson. Where my father, Earl Lloyd, not Sweetwater Clifton, the NBA owners weren't going to integrate, and they're going to turn their franchises over to a black star. So
Right.
They didn't go to those guys. Those guys weren't brought in to be the stars or the top scorers on the team, which get most of the attention even today. people were more concerned about who scored the most points and not who had the most rebounds. I think the only player in recent history to flip that a little bit was Dennis Rodman. He was just so spectacular at it and was a key component on a couple of different championship teams. But yeah, so the fact that they didn't put up huge numbers offensively, basketball wasn't as popular as it was. College basketball probably was a little more popular than the NBA was at that time. It was a big deal that my father's senior year, he was voted the second best player to perform at Madison Square Garden. And the reason why that was a big deal, because all the top teams in the country would play at the Garden if they could, right? And after the NIT tournament, he had such a good tournament, even though they didn't win, they came back and said, if we voted today, we're voting Chuck Cooper as the top player that we've laid eyes on in New York City in 1950, in that 1949-50 season. So I think that's a great question, but I think those are probably the biggest reasons. They just weren't allowed to really show all that they could do on the court, and baseball was a major deal. Now, the NBA in recent years, through the leadership of Commissioner Silver and his great team of professionals, Mark Tatum, Deputy Commissioner, Kathy Behrens, President of the NBA, they've done a fantastic job of what we call catching up. Now if you win the Pacific Division Championship, your team gets the Chuck Cooper Trophy. Yeah. So there's only 6 divisions, so there's only 6 people who have names in that regard on a division championship trophy. So, it's been tremendous partnering with them and seeing not only their desire to tell the story of the Pioneers, but also some of the moves and efforts that they're making to get the story out there. We just recently cut a deal with the NBA that's going to include a Pioneers edition of a T-shirt similar to the one we did with Actively Black, but it's through an NBA partner, so it'll be NBA marks on it. So we're excited about that. And one of the jerseys that's going to be available in that collection is a Chuck Cooper shirt, and it has the Celtics, a nice picture of my dad on there, the old Celtics logo, and it's just a beautiful shirt that I can't wait for people to see and to wear. So, we're catching up. With my father getting in to the Hall of Fame in 2019, that completed the triad of all 3 of those guys being inducted. And there's some great things that are coming down the pike. And I will say it again, that under the current leadership of the NBA, they're starting to really ramp up telling the story of the Pioneers.
Good. Now, December 23rd in Pittsburgh sports history. I mean, first off, my daughter was born in 1996 on December 23rd.
There you go.
Second, in 1972 is the Immaculate Reception.
And me, my mother, and my father were at that game.
I was there.
One of the 2 million people now that were at that game, though, right? That audience has really grown.
That's okay. My dad got mad after
program.
There you go.
So I was on gate C when the Immaculate Reception occurred.
Yeah.
So I never got to see it, but that's neither here nor there.
But you heard about it, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dad had to hear it from my brother and I until he died in 2016. About how he got mad at Kenny Stabler scoring and took us out of Three River Stadium.
Okay.
But in 1946 in Wilkinsburg against Tennessee, talk a little about what was just such an amazing moment by Duquesne University and their administration, and something as an alum that just has to make you proud of what they did there.
And really, David, I think that's when the bond, the incredible bond between my father and Duquesne University was really established. And you're referring to the Tennessee game, 1946, when University of Tennessee came to play Duquesne and McKeesport, and that gym is still standing, by the way. And David, you probably know more about the pre-communication side of the story, but there was some communication that went back and forth between the 2 universities, and I guess there was an understanding, and you might want to elaborate on that part of the story, but I guess there was a kind of an unwritten understanding that Duquesne agreed that they wouldn't play my father. But I mean, Tennessee, yeah, Duquesne agreed they wouldn't play my father, and Tennessee gets to the gym and I guess they see my father's ready to play.
Yeah, no, he claimed, John Maurer, the coach, claimed he had sent the letter, which
Right.
somebody got intercepted and never actually pushed it on. And Duquesne never actually agreed not to play your father at that game.
Right. So they get there and Tennessee's at him. Hey, well, listen, if he and they got a sold out crowd, right?
Yep.
And Tennessee's like, hey, if you're gonna play Chuck Cooper, we're not coming out. And Duquesne said, okay, go back to Tennessee, and they refunded the fans their money, which I mean, speaks volumes. I mean, we know, sports, college sports today is about money.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that money was important to the university, back in 46 as well. But it meant more to Duquesne to take that stand. So again, I know my father spoke highly of that move and the fact that they came to him and said, hey, what do you want us to do? And he was like, hey, whatever is best for university. I'm not gonna get in the way of that. And they took that team vote and they came back unanimous. We're not playing without Chuck. So again, I think that's when the bond really was initially forged, and it's stronger than it's ever been. And that's the other part that's unbelievable, that the current administration and the current stakeholders of the university, the alumni and everyone else still value my father's contribution to the Duquesne University and to the city of Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. So Chuck, I was thinking about when I knew you were coming on, I went back and I looked at the Hall of Fame induction and seeing all that talent that was up on the stage talking about your dad. Take us through that. That had to be amazing.
Yeah, well, I remember when I initially got the phone call, I was heading into a foundation meeting, and they told me who was going to be on stage, and Bill Russell, Tommy Heinsohn, Ray Allen, Dominique Wilkins, Kareem, Manny Jackson, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, and Dr. J. I mean, just the Mount Rushmore of NBA players came out to support my dad's induction. And that number of players has never been duplicated since. And I don't know if it ever will. And I thought it might get surpassed when the great late Kobe Bryant was inducted, but they did more of a family induction and enshrinement ceremony. So just incredible. But I'm actually looking at that picture now. It's over on my wall, and it just blows my mind. And beyond that, just the like some of the sidebar conversations I had with those guys, and them telling me how much they appreciated my father, what he went through, and them realizing that he wasn't able to really come in and play his game, that he had to sacrifice not only on the court, but had to endure the overt racism of that time period. And it wasn't until guys like Elgin Baylor and Bill Russell came along that were such great players, that the dominant players who just dominated the game, that they began to take a stand and said, listen, find a hotel that we all can stay at, find restaurants that we all can eat at. And that's the reason why Elgin Baylor was on stage and Bill Russell to help represent that era and that level of appreciation.
And that was the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, that Bill Russell wore his Hall of Fame ring.
Well, hey, David, it actually goes deeper than that. Bill Russell wouldn't accept his ring until my father got his ring. So even though Bill was originally inducted in 1975, he didn't receive his ring until the same year that my dad got his. So he and my dad both got the 2019 edition of the Hall of Fame ring. So and then he tweeted it out. I actually have a copy of the tweet that he says, I'm accepting my ring in a private ceremony. Chuck Cooper, Hoop Hall 19, progress. So
Nice.
He let it be known why he decided to finally accept his ring. And I'm just so glad that it happened not only in time for for me to be around to witness my father getting into the Hall of Fame. But but we lost Bill Russell a few short years after that. So I'm glad that Bill Russell was finally able to mend that relationship with the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame and get his ring that he so rightfully deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. You do such great things in your foundation under your father's name. It's one of the more tremendous foundations in the area. Why don't you talk a little about it and the work you do?
Well, thank you. And I've always been somebody who, most of my adult life has, given back to the community. I started back in the 90s when Pittsburgh had a pretty serious, visible gang problem back when guys were, that one movie came out where guys were flying colors all the time and there was a lot of violence. And they had taken over the basketball court up at East Hills Park, which my father was instrumental in seeing that project completed when he became the first African-American city department director, when P. Flaherty appointed him the director of Parks and Recreation. But I was coming home, the court was right above where I grew up at. And I was coming home and I could hear all this loud music. The smell of marijuana just reeking over the hillside. And this is before it had its medicinal qualities were being recognized, right? So, but I could hear this profanity. And so I walked up the court. This is where I grew up playing basketball, where I tried to perfect my craft. And they had these monster trucks parked on the basketball court. And at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So a young kid that wanted to play basketball, to try to work hard to get a college scholarship or just to, have some fun, couldn't utilize the court. So I was able to take back the court. It came with me my life being threatened, but because I was from that community, I knew the kingpin. He had to sit with me for about a week. So that was the first thing that I did to, really get my father's name out there. I wanted to do two things. I was blessed to have such a great family, not just my mom, but my dad. And when I lost my dad, I wanted to give as much of what he taught me to other young kids in the community. And I stopped doing that program. The YMCA moved in about 10 years later, and I was able to let it go. But then in 2009, Duquesne University came to me and said, hey, we want to do the annual Chuck Cooper basketball game. And I said, that sounds great, but I'll never do anything in my father's name that doesn't have an education/community component to it. And I said, that time I got a hold of my good friend, Tom Rooney, and who wasn't my good friend at the time. I didn't know him, but now he's just been an amazing board member and friend to me and my family and the Chuck Cooper legacy. We started the Chuck Cooper Foundation, and Tom was like, Chuck, what do you want to do? I said, let's do scholarships. He said, why don't we do graduate level scholarships? Since your father got his graduate degree after his MBA career, ties in and makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't compete with other organizations that we're currently giving undergraduate degrees to underserved students. So it made a lot of sense. We still got the Chuck Cooper Classic going strong, and we're up to almost $400,000 in scholarships that have been awarded since 2013, the year that we started awarding scholarships. And my favorite things to do is certainly one of them is to cut the checks to support the education of some incredible young people. But the other part of that, they just don't get the scholarship dollars. They have to go with me in the community and speak to high school and middle school age students. And they're all just such phenomenal young people that we give our scholarships to, that we say that they're beacons of light. So we established our Beacons of Light outreach program, where they go in, and we just actually are planning for this cohort's outreach now. But we also go into the community, into schools with other community partners. As a matter of fact, we just recently went to Miller Elementary School on the Hill with the Duquesne's men's and women's basketball team. And I wish I got a chance, David and Chris, to show you guys some of the photos, but just the amount of love and appreciation that was being given back and forth between the players and the students. It was such an educational environment and wake up opportunity, I think, for both the elementary students and for the players. The elementary students saw some role models, some people who could who they could aspire to be one day. I mean, and all the top players were there, and the coaches. So just an incredible to have the opportunity to, have an impact with my father's legacy, not just with my scholarship recipients, but with other community partners like Duquesne University and their men's and women's basketball team. It was just an incredible exchange of love and inspiration. Again, for both ways.
Well, Chuck, you're certainly a great steward of your dad's legacy, and I know that means a lot to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think I can honestly say I've worked hard at it, but it's a labor of love. It's a labor of love for sure.
That's awesome. I mean, the man was incredible. If you guys get the chance, get on Amazon, buy the book. You're not only going to read about a guy who was a Duquesne icon, certainly the most prominent graduate ever to come out of our school, after Chris Fletcher, of course. But
Hey, David, I got to say too, that was a joy. The process that we went through, writing the book and the interactions, and seeing you research and find all the information out, and me being able to run past some stories that happened that aren't in those books, and to recall some things to help pinpoint some of our research, was just an incredible process. And I've got so many compliments on that book, but I just want to thank you. I mean, being one of Pittsburgh's premier sports writers and authors, to have an opportunity to do that project with you is something that I always cherish.
Oh man, he's gonna have a big head now. I'm gonna have to deal with this.
Hey, Chris, the truth is easy. I got to tell the truth.
Jesus,
my hat size just went up to 7 5/8.
oh,
But no, I mean, it's tremendous. There's a guy who got his master's at the University of Minnesota. He taught himself how to speak Spanish to get a job, I believe, in Lancaster. Taught himself, what is it, trombone, how to play the trombone?
Yeah, trumpet. Yep.
Trumpet.
You love playing that trumpet.
Unbelievable. And he also broke barriers, as you said, the first department head of the city of Pittsburgh, and did such tremendous work securing loans for areas of the city that so desperately needed help when he was with Pittsburgh National Bank. I mean, this guy, he was not just a beast on the basketball court. He was a beast of a human being. And I get goosebumps every time I talk about him. And we both so much appreciate you being on the show tonight and talking about it.
My pleasure. It's easy when you're hanging out with some of your favorite people. So I appreciate you guys really having me on. I really do.
And Chuck, one last question: how can people get involved with your foundation?
Just go to the Chuck Cooper Foundation's website. There's a form you can fill out to become a volunteer, or if you feel generous and you want to make a donation, we certainly appreciate that. A small contribution will go a long way. So, but to chuckcooperfoundation.org, you can find us there. And again, we appreciate anything that you do to support the foundation. And thank you for the opportunity to mention that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on, Chuck. We appreciate it. And we're going to have you on again, maybe
Sounds
in December, to talk about that incredible moment in Duquesne history.
That sounds great. And hopefully my Celtics will make they made some power moves, and hopefully they can bring home number 18. So
this is
hopefully
the year
we'll have
they're going to do it.
To talk about in the future.
This is the year we will certainly talk about that.
And go Dukes. I think my Dukes are going to make some noise too.
Guys. All right. I'm ready. I'm ready to admit that they might be good this year. Okay.
All right. I just got my Pittsburgh tournament tickets in hopes they're so good they get a home court bid.
There you go. I think it'll happen. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, Chuck. You take care.
Okay. Take care now.
All right.
Always great to have him on.
Absolutely. But so hopefully October 18th becomes with the respect for Chuck's accomplishment that day that it deserves. So that is the hope, my friend.
I'm excited for it. I still have my Chuck Cooper Classic shirt, the first one.
Oh, okay. I've seen that before. So it is a classic, my friend.
Yeah,
it is a true classic. But all right, that's our show tonight. I don't know what else to say that they'll be able to top
No,
Just
I
talking.
think we quit while we're ahead.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. So, all right, my
Yeah,
friend,
man.
you have a great night.